Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here for checking out the series. You know what to do. If you like what you see, what you hear, hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And I'm excited today to have him. Ryan Tedder, OneRepublic is here. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm well. You guys are back with a brand new record, Artificial Paradise, which is such a great record and it's got such an interesting story because I know this has sort of had this gestation period longer. Like, does it feel like a different record to you? Like, does this group of songs feel different from the other albums because of this?
It does. I was just telling, I had it on the like a, a a catch up, like an urgent catch up with another artist I'm working with, Tate McRae, like literally 5 minutes as I was walking into the studio. She's like, "God," she's like, "You're doing a lot of promo," and I was like, "I got to jump. I'm doing an interview," and she's like, "You guys are doing so much promo and press right now," and I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "It's weird to be back in that saddle again because the last time I did it was limited. It was like you know." Um, COVID era, and now it's such a familiar feeling because we've been doing this for 18 years now. Um, but it's this one's bizarre because I was telling her this album. I love this album. It's a weird feeling because this album marks for us the end of the album cycle because the way these songs came out. And like we're in this era now where it's like whether it's Billy or Taylor or Eminem, like they might drop one song and then 2 weeks later, boom, here's the album, right? That has now become back in fashion again, which let me remind everyone, like the previous 4, 5, 6 years, that wasn't really the move. It was like you single, then album. So I feel like I told the band, I was like, we got to readjust to the modern times and like I want to get back into make sitting down in a focused period of time and making an album, picking the singles, doing it like it's like almost going back to how it used to be, for the last 80 years. And this one feels like I've clearly never been pregnant, but it's like the longest pregnancy of all time. It's like two and a half. You know, I, I was saying to someone this morning, our second single was "I Ain't Worried,"
Mhm.
which was in Top Gun.
Mhm.
And the first single was West Coast. So if you look at the numbers, I think West Coast came out 27, 28 months ago. So that's really how long this this album cycle has been. And we still made a very, very much intentional effort. Um, in addition to all the songs that have already been released, whether it's in movies, TV shows, or just standalone singles, of which there's like 5 or 6, we still wanted to give our fans a true album. So we, made 10 completely new records for the album. Um, and in that process, especially in the last 2 months, I got re-inspired to do the next out. Like I already know what it's going to sound like. I already have song titles. I have like page of song titles. I know exactly what I'm writing about. It's like I feel more amped now to do new music. Now that we've dropped an album, I'm just ready to go right back in.
And yet you have to be here answering these questions about these songs. That's it, but that's
I,
true. Like for those, for as you say, and for like years of a lead up, and then some of these songs, at least one of them, I think, even reaches back a decade, which that's not too
yeah,
uncommon. I mean, that
yeah.
happens a lot, you know.
Last
But
holiday, yeah.
yeah, so but when you're putting it together, like it still feels complete. It doesn't feel scattershot, and then you have these moments like Singapore that kind of ties the room. You know, that's the Lebowski rug, I
Yep,
guess.
yep. Yeah, good reference.
That sort of happens there. But
Ties the room together.
like how do you make it an album when you have something like this? Like, do you even look for a narrative in that case?
It was very difficult. The thing that made it the most difficult, well, honestly, was the last 3 months of song releases because we had this David Guetta collaboration that we'd been sitting on for 9 months, and like it was been done for 9 months, and then it was going to come out earlier this year, and me and David both texted about it, and we're like, dude, like listen to this song. This is not a winter. This is like David in Ibiza, like in doing his residency, shooting a video in Miami in May, and like it was for us it was a clearly a summer release. Um, and then by sheer like happenstance, in the last 9 months, we got asked to do the theme song for UEFA, which obviously is Europe huge and it's a dance record. And then we got asked to do write an original song for I'm a huge anime fan and manga fan, and the number one show in Japan is Monster Number Eight, and Japan is my like probably top three place to tour and visit, eat, travel, stay in my life. So anytime a company or like anyone in Japan asks us to do something, the answer is yes, because I just love it there. It's like, oh, you're going to give me a reason to go back? Sure. So, I mean, I'm there in 2 weeks. We're playing Summer Sonic Festival in Tokyo. We have another show in Tokyo, and then Osaka, and then Bangkok. So for me, the last 9 months of material is what made the album difficult narrative wise, because those were standalone songs. So what I did, I made an executive order in the last, 48 hours before deadline of handing in the album. This is 2 weeks ago. I changed the entire track list. And like my bass player wanted to kill me because I listened down to the whole thing and I was like, this doesn't flow. Also, if I'm a fan and I get this album, there's 16 songs, whatever it is, and if every third song is a song that came out 9 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 years ago, it doesn't feel new. So I took all the songs, with the exception of I Ain't Worried. I took all, because it flowed. I took all of the songs that were you know, dichotomous, right? Disparate. And I put them at the very end. So it's like, for a fan experience, if you've ever liked anything we've ever done, you start from the top and go down and it still feels like a body of work. Then you get to the Guetta, you get to the dance. It almost feels like the remix pack at the bottom of the album. And this is not me like disassociating or like marginalizing those songs. I love those songs, but I just wanted to call it what it was. It's like, these are new standalone songs that really, they weren't written for they had nothing to do with the album. Let's not try to pretend they did. At the same time, for people who buy the physical album or the LP, they should still get those songs. So we just put them, it's like, you make it to that end and you're entering into the deluxe portion of the record. But the first 10 songs is very much like OneRepublic album.
Yeah. I mean, even, as we were growing up, you'd have the hidden tracks, you'd have the bonus cuts, or something like that. Like it feels a little bit like, it gets to kind of go back to that territory a bit, which I loved. Exactly, I mean, that was the surprises at the end,
Yeah. And also like artists that, most artists have a very funny relationship with electronic music and DJs, unless you are one. I'm lucky, and I mean this with no no sarcasm. I'm friends with pretty much all of them. Like the DJ community in the music industry are some of the nicest artists that you will come across. I kid you not, the least ego, the most like likely to introduce you to their mom. Like they're when I think about like whether it's Calvin or Martin Garrix or David Guetta, Diplo, like I consider all of them like really good friends, like dudes that like we connect in different cities around the world. We show up at weddings for DJs, managers, friends, and so I love them. I do a lot of collaborations. I just you have to be careful, like how frequently you do them. I think artists monitor that because like, I'm very cautious to not end up sounding like, oh, that's just the dude that just does dance music or whatever, or sounding too remixy. But to that point, when you would I remember as a kid and in my 20s and teens, whatever, when DJs and remixes started to become a big thing. Oakenfold being like the first guy I remember really doing, of course, Giorgio Moroder or whatever back in the day, but like Paul Oakenfold, who's also a friend of mine. My first cuts as a songwriter in LA were Paul Oakenfold.
Wow.
And he was the first thing I featured on. If you go look at A Lively Mind, 2005, 2006, I'm like singing on 2 or 3 songs. And if you had a U2 album that had a Paul Oakenfold remix, it would be like, here's the album, 12 songs. And then track 13 is like, here's the remix, here's the dance music. So that was more or less my thesis with this.
That's so funny. I was just listening to some of those specific remixes because I think U2's been pumping some of those out streaming that they never have before. You get the Perfecto remix and all of that. And you know.
William Orbit, the William Orbit
Right.
remix.
Right.
Yeah,
I love that. No,
yeah,
I grew up on that stuff too. I love that stuff. You know, we're talking about that era a little bit, and that song "I Ain't Worried" because you call out 1999. Was there any reason why? What was it about
yeah.
1999 that made it into that song?
You know what's funny is like you're asking me a question that became a huge question on Reddit, like shortly after that song blew up. You know, so year and a half ago, whatever. That was like somebody sent me this subreddit. It was like, yo, everyone's trying to guess what these lyrics mean in the song. Okay, so when I wrote it, a lot of times when I write, I start chorus first. I'm very big on like chorus, writing a chorus. The joke that I give that I tell in songwriting sessions all the time when you get buried at writing a verse,
Mhm.
right? Uh, Verses are great. Listen, verses are phenomenal. So I put the parentheses around this. I'm in the under the guise of like pop or like hit songwriting 101, like whatever, if that's even a thing. Um, if you write a lot of songs, as I do, like one to two a day, um, there's the God component where it's like the clouds part and the idea enters the room if you're lucky, and you're like thank you, and then you're trying to work backwards from that idea. What are we taught? What's the phrase? What's the lyric? What's the idea? The emotion, right? Um, and then there's the okay, can we get more efficient and not get I have years of writing songs of getting mired in the weeds of a good verse or a pre-chorus. And then you get to the chorus, you realize, guys, we just spent 2-3 hours debating one line in a verse. We don't even have a chorus. This isn't a song. So I say that the road to part-time management position at Guitar Center is paved with incredible verses. and and so with that in mind, I write the chorus first, but I ain't worried. I had the chorus almost immediately. I just said, I had the phrase like, oh, it's like, I ain't worried about, like, nobody's worried about anything. I ain't worried about a thing. And I was like, that's the title. I ain't worried about it. And then the verse is gibberish. So I'm recording. If you heard the original demo, I'm singing. I'm like, I don't know you, but so time is running out. I need a taste of. And I had the phrase, I ain't worried about a night right now, keeping dreams alive. Like, and out of my mouth was like, na 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 na. It's like na 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 heroes, right? And I like the word heroes because they're obviously pilots, right? These are like Top Gun pilots, like military, I'll save you all the stories. But yes, I have family in the military and they're heroes, and like it's like they fought in wars and stuff. And so in my mind, I was like associating them with heroes. And I had na 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 na, and then I was like, okay. And then I needed a more definitive lyric the next day because they were asking for it. And so I was like thinking about the pilots, right? And I was like, no, no, no. Sounds like I'm saying 1999, right? And I thought Prince, right behind your right shoulder, right? And who's a I steal from him more than any artist alive. I steal melodies, I steal cadences, I steal music. He's the one I have historically borrowed, including my first number one hit ever was just me trying to rip him off as much as humanly possible, just
You can
in
rip
terms of
somebody
spirit.
off. Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. Bleeding Love. Bleeding Love is me just trying to rip off his spirit, right? Um, and then I literally, not making this up, I did the calculus on what's the typical age of a fighter pilot trainee and when is this movie coming out, right? All of that. And I was like, okay, it's coming out, and did the math on that. I was like, they're going to be 23, 24 years old in this program. They were born in 1999. So the entire lyric is 1999, i.e., when these pilots, most of them were born, heroes. So it was actually very literal.
Oh. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
that's crazy. Seriously,
Yeah,
because to just go from syllable association,
yeah.
maybe some, like I'm thinking of the ones who didn't go the extra step. Rusted Roots. That's just the
Send me on
gibberish
my
and
way.
like the gibberish
Send me on my
stage.
way. How about Yellow Ledbetter? 100% gibberish.
Ledbetter, exactly. Although,
100%.
do you know that in the same way he didn't finish it out, but that's a song about the Gulf War. Did you know that?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's like I when I heard the full story, because my buddy Watt produced Pearl Jam and
Mhm.
produced all of Eddie's stuff in the last few years, and Andrew told me when he told me the full story, and that It was a guide vocal track demo, which we all do. You know, speaking of YouTube, Bono does them better than anybody. It's called Bonalese. He speaks Bonalese. Um, it was a guide vocal track, phenomenal melody. I mean, the melody on Yellow Lead, but clearly it's a phenomenal melody. The song smashed with no lyrics.
There's a B side, and it ends up a hit.
B side.
Yeah.
It got to in the hands of the record label. Pearl Jam was on tour. They had blown up, and that you're chasing around the world after your first massive hit, and you can't stop to do anything. You don't have time to finish shit. As is what happens. I lived. No, I didn't live Pearl Jam success, but I lived that with OneRepublic. And he sends. We need a follow-up single. We need another single. We need do the guys have anything? Someone in the management team or the producer was like, we have this other record that's like or we need a B-side. Correct. We need a B-side for this record. We have this other song. It's not finished though, but it's very promising. Send it to the label guy. The label hears it. He goes, I don't know what he's saying, but this is a smash. I love it. Threw it on there, mixed, mastered, without Eddie's approval.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah. And now it closes out nearly every single one of their shows.
Every one of those shows. How do you again learn? I mean, how about Sigur Rós? Sigur Rós, every single song. That's probably some of the most beautiful music in the world. Every single song, made up language.
Yeah.
It's like Elvish. Yeah, but like 1990. Unfortunately, I'm cursed with like extreme right brain, left brain polarity, meaning I flip back and forth between both, and I can't disavow one no matter how deep I am in the other. So that lyric is what you're hearing. I had to make sense out of it. I had to make sense. I would have changed it to 1989 if that would have mathematically made more sense in terms of the age of the. I was seriously like, so I thought it was so random. And I was like, this is going to throw people. But I was like, no, it actually does make sense. 1999 Heroes. Yeah.
I love that 10 times more. And I liked it to begin with. So that's just.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a crazy story. Yeah. Since we're on the topic of songs too, Last Holiday, speaking of lyrics, I mean, these feel the like, I don't know, it feels like you're working through something on that one, maybe more than the other songs.
On that day, I very, very, very much was. That song was from 10 years ago. I was at the only dark place that I'd ever been in the history of being a writer, producer, or in the band. It wasn't 10 years, it was like 8 years. It was 2016, 17. It might have even been, it was 16. I think it was 2016. I was burning the candle at both ends. I had been touring nonstop since 2007. We had just come off our biggest album, our third album, Native. We toured 2.5 years on Native. To drop a pin in what that year was for us, with Counting Stars, and then as a result, all the peripheral songs. We had 5 singles on that album, and every one of them became a big record somewhere around the world. And so we were chasing the sun for 2.5 years. When we finished the tour, someone at Live Nation was like, "Hey, congrats! You guys know that you just like with that last show you did and the length of time, you're the 4th longest tour in history."
Wow.
Now, while that sounds like an interest, like, oh, that's cool. It's not cool. Like, you're married with 2 kids.
Right.
You all have families. Congrats. You were just gone. You just, if your kid is 6, you just missed a third of their life. And so that's really what all that I was shouldering that. I was feeling guilt about that, coupled with, it was towards the end of 2016, and there are certain things that I had wanted within the band, a lot of which we got. I'm a very goal-oriented person. Then there's some things that I just didn't think were ever going to be in the cards for us. And no matter how bad I asked for it or wanted it or, whatever. And it's not materialistic things or money or anything. It was nothing like that. And at that point in time in 2016, we were wrapping an album. I knew I had no gas left in the tank and I was exhausted. We were promoting the first couple singles off the album. And we had a long history of never putting out the right first single first, like other than Apologize, we never got it right. We never got it right. If you look at our single releases, we never got it right. And like from a fan music perspective, people go, what do you mean? What is it? What do you mean? And only an artist can understand. especially in that era, if you, before social media, before you knew if a song was going to connect with the world or not, you had to push every single release like it was the greatest song of your life. All the TV circuits around the world, all the newspapers, all the interviews, every time you dropped a new single, you pushed it like a miniature album. Um, if you didn't, if the big record on your album was third, i.e., Counting Stars, that does not save you from 8 months of travel, work, and craziness on the first two singles. Like you work them equally, right? And again, this is getting very much in insider baseball in the weeds from an artist
Please, I love
perspective.
this. Yeah.
But in this era, this era ended around COVID when TikTok took over and social media took over, and then it just became a function of like who has the most followers or who can go viral or who can get a song in a big movie, right? Prior to that, though, you did the traditional around the world march, we would call it the around the world march, pushing every song like it was your last. And so when you don't put out the right single first, like the one that's gonna change your life, you just the slog is so unreasonable, and you're gone for months on end, pushing a rock uphill that you realize you're never going to crest the hill. You're pushing the wrong rock, and you go, oh God, we got to do it again. Now this is coming off of a 2.5 year tour, and I was recording the whole time on tour so that we could flip right into the next album cycle and keep the momentum. And I get to 2016, I realized even though I loved the first single we put out, it was not the right choice for what we should have put out that time. And the right choice was on the album. We just hadn't gotten to it yet. And then I saw the album release coming up. I was a few months away. We were recording last holiday at Paul Allen's house. R.I.P. Paul Allen. He had a studio in his house, and he was letting me use that studio. And then I remember the day that my wife was like, "Have you seen your calendar for the top of next year?" Now we're like in October. She shows it to me. I was gone from September 2nd until December 18th. I was gone all but like a week around the world, and then home for Christmas. And then starting, I think it was like February 1st was a 3-month long tour part 20 for the new album. And I saw it, went into a complete panic attack, like anxiety and crippling anxiety. I stopped sleeping. And when you stop sleeping, your serotonin drops, depression sets in. I'd never experienced depression in my life. I didn't even know what to call it. I was like, I have an infinite sadness. Why am I, you know what I mean? I'm in sunny California. I'm successful and I'm infinitely sad and I can't escape it. And anyway, blah, 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 blah. But like that song was written last holiday. It's like, if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, I'm giving myself words of encouragement in the verse and saying life is short, but at the same time, in the chorus, I'm like, I don't believe in the stars anymore. They didn't give me what I asked for. And it's also a reference to Counting Stars. So it's like, yeah, that was like a very interesting, that one song. I mean, it is very, forlorn and like somewhat somber and sad because that mentally I was in a horrific state when I wrote that lyric. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. Like even for it to be sad, like most of my
Yeah,
favorite
I
songs are
know.
sad songs, right?
It's happy, sad. Yeah.
Sure, but to like I can understand how you might I don't even know if you have a complicated relationship, but I know the song's been around for a while, like to
Yeah.
maybe have to get to a point where you
Correct.
separate yourself a little bit from that
That
moment before you can put it out in the
that
world.
is you hit the nail on the head. I had to in our next album we'll have the most emotional by far based on the records that I'm currently working on. We'll be the most emotional album we've ever put out. I feel like it's so weird that the mental shit that you go through as a writer. I've gone through so many cycles, frankly after Native and that whole run, we got jumped into Oh My My, and I told the band, I was like, guys, I need to do some disassociative type records. I need to do some dance records and I was working with Cassius at the time a lot, some like French disco inspired records. Like funny enough, years before the Dua Lipa stuff started coming out, I was so far down that rabbit hole with Philippe Zadar and boom bass, and I wanted to embrace. I didn't want to go deep. I was so tapped out. I said everything I wanted to say and needed to say by album 3. I mean, if you add up the amount of songs, I mean, I put out probably 35, 36 songs at that point with OneRepublic. I had covered the span of my life experiences and what I needed to get off my chest and say, and felt that I could contribute to society as an honest artist. And by the time I got to 2017, I was so emotionally tapped out. 13 years of singing about myself, or 10 years, I can't do the math. 10 years of singing about myself straight. And I said this in an interview the other day. Being a recording artist it's the greatest job in the world. I get to see the world and have and impact people's lives with music that change their lives, and then they in turn change my life. It's also a very narcissistic endeavor. Yes, we give a lot, right? But it's hey, here's some songs about me. By the way, you like those? Guess what? You know what's coming next? More songs about me. You like that one? I'm going to do a guest feature song with another artist talking about me. And so, not throwing stones at all the artists in the world, but like, it's like, dear diary, like, here, check out some more of my personal. And then through that, the listener also connects and finds catharsis, because they go, oh, I know the song's about her or about him, but God, I relate to that. And that becomes but let's not sugarcoat it. It's still like beautiful narcissism that set to a sonic landscape that is like sucks you in, right? But I love music. Music is my favorite thing in the world. So like I'm sitting around listening to tons of artists sing about themselves. You know, I envy artists like Prince and like The Weeknd and Muse, who can write about aliens and like dystopian future civilizations, right? The problem is you kind of have to end the way you started, because we formed a relationship, like an agreement with the fans. These are personal songs. From Dave, Apologize is my relationship. Stop and Stare is exactly how I felt as a 24-year-old trying to get the hell out of hometown, right? And all the way to Counting Stars, very much. They're all my personal journey. You establish that. The way you start's the way you finish. The Weeknd started, I'm able, but The Weeknd is the character I made up, right? Even Timberlake told me one time, like JT, like Future Sex Love Sounds, that's a character he made up, right? Like he's like, who the hell says I'm bringing sexy back? He's like, dude, I can't, like, I like me, but I can't, like, come on, like, you can't buy that. I can't believe myself saying that. But that guy, the JT that's in the video and on the album cover, like that dude can do it. And so a lot of artists that's a freedom, right? I have to write songs. Like, the only way we really connect with fans is if I have to believe it myself for them to believe it. And so there's so many beautiful, huge records that I've had in my hands that we can't put out because they're not believable coming from us. And so a lot of them go to other artists or whatever. That's exhausting. And I've had the conversation with Bono about this, because he's run into the same thing, right? And he's like, how many ways can you sing about love, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, though, something happens when you get into your 40s, like your give a shit meter just breaks, and your give a shitter, as other people call it, and mine finally broke. And so my preciousness over things like, oh, I can't talk about this topic in life. It was such a dark period. And it took me 7 years for even to really get into that with my band or the manager. I hated anything that had to do with that era. I hate even the songs on that album. I was so unlikely to play or perform live because it reminded me of how much I hated that year and how dark I felt and how exhausted I was, and how then I was like, I'm an absentee dad and husband, and this is an endless merry-go-round that I've created and I can't get off it. And and then at the same time, then I'd have that argument in my head, and I'd also go, oh, boo-hoo, like, world's tiniest violin, dude, you succeeded, like, literally kiss my ass, like, stop crying. So I'm cynical in that way. So I'm like going, well, I don't deserve to feel sad. I don't deserve to be upset. And now I can look back on it and go, everything that goes up must come down, and then you got to figure out a way to get back up. And I can put out records and love that album and love that era. And now I can write with way more freedom than I've ever felt at a much more rapid pace. And I'm way more convicted about getting out records that are meaningful and connective in the world than ever. And that's just getting older. And like,
sure.
having that like historic perspective. You know what I mean?
When you get, I would think it too. When you have so much success, like in my head, I did an interview. It was probably last year with Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, and he said, when do you have when is it too many hits? And what he was saying is basically what you're also getting to. It's like,
Yeah,
when do you
yeah,
take time for
yeah,
you to write the Alien
yeah,
record? Like if you
yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to, like at some
yeah,
point, you like worrying about, well, is it going to be another hit? Like, man, you've had so many hits.
yeah, yeah. Now you have a point. Like I love Andy. Uh, you have a good point, and I think that for me, I think about these things in the timeline, right? And I woke up, we wake up when we went from being like band starting with Apologize and Stop and Stare and like Secrets, and everything that we had was super dramatic and you know uh kind of forlorn, and use that word twice, never use that word twice in a day, but like that was the sound. So then I instinctively was like, let's get some tempo. And then I came from such a sad place in 2016, 2017. Guys, anything we do for the next few years needs to be energetic and tempo and happy. Well, then we did, in my mind, we've over indexed on that now. So it's like, whether it's Run or Runaway or, I Ain't Worried. I'm so grateful that those songs and Hugh Jackman yesterday posted himself in Sunset Plaza in front of the Wolverine sign, um, and picked OneRepublic Sunshine. It's on his page right now as his song. I was like, I don't even know we're on his. We did do like the Tonight Show with him at some point, so maybe that's where he figured us out. But I was like, that's so cool. Like, I love that record. I love that like that we've gotten a whole new huge demographic of kids that are OneRepublic fans now. Like the fan that was freaking out the most, we did the Today Show on Friday, and there's a 13-year-old girl jumping up and down crying. I'm like, well, that doesn't happen every day for a band in their 30s and 40s. And so those songs, the feel good, the last 4 years of our music, which has been very much focused coming out of COVID, especially coming out of COVID, on feel good, euphoric. Like, we're not trying to take you down like the Cry Train. Like, we want escapism. We want it. We gave it. I think I've like hit the needle on Max Sunshine for the last 4 years. And so I'm going, okay, it's time to be vulnerable again and be emotional and hit people where we hit them first. And because I can strike that chord like crazy when I feel it's authentic. And so I want to go into that emotive bag. And then honestly, to Andy's point, like thinking in chapters, like without question, the next thing that I would do would be the Alien. Like, guys, we've had enough. We can't fit these records into a set list anymore. Um, I want to do an album where we're not focused on like, oh, is this going to connect in a mass? Do we have a smash or do we not? Like, I just wanted, like that for sure is stirring in me to do something that's completely off the grid, just to prove that we can do it. First of all, musically, because we can, and second, it'd be fun to reflect the music that the reason we became a band, the music that we listened to when we formed, is still the music that we love. Like, my favorite band, the concert I've been to the most in the last 3 years is LCD Soundsystem. Please, and I can go down that hallway without blinking because of how much I've consumed and records that I've made, not for OneRepublic, in that arena. Um, you know, this is going to sound like the most old white guy statement of all time, but like Radiohead, of course, and monster massive fan. The first single we ever put out was just us ripping off Radiohead in like 2005, and it would be, to Andy's point, how much is, when is enough? And I think that that's the question that I still find myself asking, because like I have to, at some point, I have to pump the brakes. Um, I don't mean flatten the brakes. I mean, yeah, I have to. I found a sixth gear in the last couple of years, and at some point I got to go back down to 5, 4, and sit at a comfortable 3. And I see that coming. I'm not there yet, but I know it's coming. And even this past year as a band for the first time ever, which is like infinitely stupid that it took 17, 18 years of accidentally committing to way too many dates. We drew a line in the sand of what is the maximum amount of weeks that we will tour in a calendar year, no matter what the offers are. So if we have the biggest album of our lives in 2 years, and it just goes, whoa, you guys are we get stadium offers in Europe and blah blah blah. We're still sticking to no, it's got to be 8 to 10 weeks. Like that's it. Figure it out. Figure out the math. But like we have to have a life with our kids and our families, and like I don't want to miss out on it, but I'm still having fun. Mm-hmm. And I was texting Lau this morning. It was the first person that texted me when I woke up. We were talking about touring. He's like, "Do you still enjoy it?" And do you still like, or do you prefer the studio? I said, well, it's like kind of like saying, do you like cheeseburgers or ice cream? They're two completely different things, you know. Do you enjoy sushi or pickleball? They're both great, you know. But for me, it's like every day that I was like, I could be standing in the top of like my favorite hotel in the world in Hong Kong in the Rosewood, looking at the unobstructed view of like, you know, Victoria Harbor. And 18 years in, I have those moments. Or I was at the rooftop of a hotel in Vienna last week for a day off, and I'm sitting out there at night, like, you know, having a cigar, which you can only do when you're not singing, and I'm just like supremely grateful. I'm so supremely grateful that I get to do this for a living. I wanted to see the world. I hoped it would be through music. Had it not been through music, you know, I guarantee you, my kid asked me, what would you do today with the technology and social media and everything if you were like 17, 18? I said, I would still try my hand at music. If I could pick anyone in the musical landscape to emulate, it would probably be Calvin Harris, because it's self-contained. He writes and produces, sings occasionally, but people want to collaborate with him. Calvin to me is like the ideal. He if you could craft a career that can survive the downturn of bands that's in the last handful. And we predate that, so we're lucky. We like that we've gotten bigger the last few years in terms of like tickets and fans and that type of thing. But like starting a band now is really difficult. It's a tough time to be in a band. I think this too shall pass. I think that like everything, it's cyclical. And 2 years from now, it's gonna. I always say, Blur song 2, like woo, we need just one of those bands, or like last night, The Strokes. It takes one big record, and then bands are back. And I'm just waiting for that record. But Calvin has had so much control over his destiny in the last 15 years, and his craft is so good, and he can do whatever he wants. And so I've told my kid, who's 13 and is deep into music production, I was like, I would do that, Calvin, or I'd be one of those travel bloggers, man. I would get a little microphone covered, you know, with or without the girlfriend, and find me everywhere. I would be Carmen Sandiegoing my ass around the world, and I'd be having hotels in Bali pay for me to be a digital nomad. I'd be like, I'm in, you know, cafe in Bangkok. I'm in Cape Town, like 100%. That'd be one of the two gigs that if you can't do music, do the travel blog. But I get to do both at this point. So I consider myself extremely, extremely lucky.
Yeah. I will say, as much as I really do enjoy this record, and I really, maybe this is one of my favorite records that you guys done for all these different reasons that we're talking about. I'm really excited to see where you go with this. And I'll say, because no matter how weird you get, and I mean that in the sense of Radiohead's a, you know, top 10 band for me or whatever, you're such a good songwriter that, you know, they still had Karma Police, you know, as an all-time classic.
Yep.
You could do the record
100%.
about robots, but somehow you're going to come out with Mr. Roboto, and it's going to be, you know, amazing.
Exactly. But I'm telling you, from a personal mental health standpoint, I have to do that album, because I have to. And I'm also finally, for the first time ever, drafted a bunch of solo material and solo music. And I'm not doing like, I can hear the collective like eye rolls of all these people. Oh, great. What we need is another lead singer from a band like doing a solo thing. Mine sounds nothing like OneRepublic. It took me forever to figure out even what it would be. But I need those avenues, because to bring it full circle to what I said earlier on, you do to an extent make a contract with your fans. It is a relationship. It's a marriage. I'm terrified of disappointing them. And any artist who says they're not is lying. I'm terrified of disappointing our fans. We've built this over the years. I want to connect with them in every meaningful way possible. And this next series of songs next year, the emotional stuff, I think will do that. But at the same token, you do it is very frustrating when you do experiment to learn where the edges of the sandbox are. And I've already poked that. I poked it in 2016. I learned, okay, yeah, like French funk disco is not, they don't want that from us, right? And like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you realize, no, that's not you. You know what I mean? So yeah, well, I think at that point we'll do another interview, and I'll be like, hey, you're gonna be going, how, I don't know when. Just like, what do your fans think? I mean, big old question mark. I have no idea, but we are 100% doing the album about robots and AI for sure. For sure. 2027.
I look forward to it. In the meantime, congrats on this one with Artificial Paradise, man. And seriously, it's such a pleasure talking to you. I enjoyed this so much. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.